Hello there, this is Dimitris Christou, and we are about to see a nice tutorial about creating a cool animation in Blender. And for the first time in this blog, we'll be using dynamic paint with a nice little twist. So let's begin. I have the default cube here selected, and I'll hit 1 and 5 on my mirror keypad to switch to front ortho view. I'll hit the tab key to switch from object to edit mode and hit S and Z to scale my cube on the Z axis. And I'll scale it up 5 times. You can see at the bottom left corner that I'm scaling my cube for 5 along the global Z axis. Okay. Now I'll hit Ctrl R for a loop cut, and you can see the loop cut here, but I'll scroll my mouse wheel up until I have 4 loop cuts and then click the left mouse button to confirm. Now I'll hit the A key to deselect all and A again to select all, and hit W for the specials menu and click subdivide. Now you can see the subdivide options here. We have the number of cuts, and I'll bring the number of cuts up from 1, let's set it up to 9. Okay. Now I'm hitting the tab key to switch from edit to object mode, and I'll hit 1 on my mirror keypad for the front overview, and I'll hit G and Z to grab and move my cube on the Z axis. And I'll also, for now, hit Z and X, grab and move it on the X axis, move it on the side for a while. Now I'll hit Shift A, and I'll add mesh circle. This circle will use 32 vertices, so we're good. I'll hit 1 on my mirror keypad for the front ortho view and hit the tab key. And what I'll also do for my circle here is move over to the modifiers, click this little icon for the object modifiers, and click add modifier, and I'll add a mirror modifier. I'll change the axis from X to Z, and now I have every vertex on my circle here selected, and I'll hit the E and Z to extrude on the Z axis, and I'll extrude my vertices up on the Z axis. I'll hit E again and Z to extrude on the Z axis once more, and now hit the S key to scale the extruded vertices down, and again hit E and Z, extrude on the Z axis just by a tiny bit, and then hit the S key to scale the vertices down at about here, and once more hit E to extrude, right mouse button click to cancel any movement for the extruded vertices, and hit the S key to scale them down. Okay, and once more hit the E key to extrude, right mouse button click to cancel any movement, and hit S and 0 to zero out the size for the extruded vertices, and I'm bringing them all at the center, and then hit the enter. And what I'll do now is hit the A key to deselect all and A again to select all, and I'm at mesh tool options. Let's click remove doubles to remove 31 vertices from my object here. And what I'll also do is click Ctrl and N to recalculate my object normals to point outside. Now what I'll do is hit Ctrl R for another loop cut. You can see right here, and I'll move it up. And let's create 2 more loop cuts here. Okay. Now I'm hitting the tab key to switch from edit to object mode, and I'll click smooth under the shading. And what I'll also do is click add modifier, and I'll add a subdivision surface modifier, and I'll set the view subdivisions from 1 up to 2. Okay, we have our cylinder here ready. What I'll do now is hit the tab key to switch from object to edit mode, hit A to deselect all and A again to select all, and hit S and Shift Z to scale only on the X and Y axis. Let's scale it down at about there. Okay, now hitting the tab key again, and let's keep on modeling our scene. I'll hit G and X, grab my cylinder and move it on the X axis. Let's move it to the side. I'm selecting the cube, hitting 1 on my numeric keypad, and then hit G and X to grab and move on the X axis. And what I'll also want here is hit Shift A, and we'll add mesh plane. You can see our plane here. I'll hit the S key to scale my plane up. I'll scale it up 8 times. Okay. And S and X, let's scale it up on the X axis. Okay. And let's scale it also on the Y axis and Y at about here. And now I'm hitting the tab key to switch from object to edit mode. Click 1, hold down the shift key, select the second vertex, and I'll hit 3 on my numeric keypad for the right ortho-view. Let's zoom in to take a good look, and I'll hit the E key to extrude. Extrude here, hit the E key, extrude again, hit the E key, extrude again, and I'm actually creating a background object here. Hit the E key, extrude again, hit the E key, extrude again, and once more E to extrude, extrude up, and then again hit the E key to extrude and Z. I'll move those vertices way up, and I'll create some loop cuts. Control R for a loop cut. Let's place one here, and Control R for another loop cut. Let's move this one up. Control R, another loop cut. Let's move this one over here, and now I'll hit Control R. We want a loop cut at about here, and now I'll scroll my mouse wheel up once for 2 loop cuts, and now I'll hit S and X to scale my loop cuts here on the X-axis. Alright, and what I'm doing is actually tightening up my mesh, and I'm doing this because I'll hit the tab key and move over to the modifiers and click add modifier and add a subdivision surface modifier. Alright, now what I'll also do for my plane here is move over to the mesh tools and to the object tools, and under the shading click smooth, and I'll also increase the view subdivisions from 1 up to 2. Okay, now I'm selecting let's select the cube. I'm hitting the 1 on my numeric keypad and then the del key on my numeric keypad again to frame my cube, and now I'll hit Control Alt and 0 to roughly place my camera, and click this frame, right mouse button, click this frame to select it, and I want to move my camera back, and I'm setting the Y value here to be -24. Let's hit the Z key, we're good at -24, okay. I'm right clicking this cylinder to select it, and I'm hitting 1 on my numeric keypad for the front ortho view, and then Z for the solid view for the viewport, and I'll hit the G key to grab and move it to the side. Let's see through the camera, and what I want here for the cylinder is to be out of the frame at the beginning of the animation. I don't want this object to be seen by the camera, and let's move the camera back a bit more. Let's set it to -25. Okay, and perhaps let's bring it up to 6, or perhaps 5.5. okay, and we're good. Let's take a look, and now it's time to apply the dynamic paint on our objects. I'm right clicking this cube to select it and move over to the physics panel and click dynamic paint. Now what I want for this cube is to be the canvas, and that's because I want the cylinder to affect the cube. So the cube is the canvas, click add canvas, and the important options here is the format to be set to vertex and the surface type to be set to waves. Okay, and now I'm selecting the cylinder, and the cylinder will of course be a brush. So this is the object that will affect the canvas, the cube. Click add brush, and I think we're good at the default values. Okay, now time for a test, but before we do that, let's add some materials to our objects. I'm clicking new while my cylinder is selected. We have the material. I'll bring the specular intensity down to 0. I'll change the diffuse color. Let's make it a nice bright green color at about here. And what I'll also do is add some mirror. I'll increase the amount for the reflectivity to 0.3. Change the color for the reflectivity. Let's make it darker at about here. And I'll increase the Fresnel. Let's bring it up. Okay, and I think we're good. And I'm selecting the cube, right mouse button, click to select it. I'll add the same material to this object, And what I'll do now is move over to the object modifiers, and you can see that we have the dynamic paint here shown as a modifier, and we'll add a subdivision surface after the dynamic paint modifier, and I'll increase the subdivisions for the viewport from 1 to 2, and you could also increase the render subdivisions and set them up to 3. Now for my cube, what I also want is the shading to be set to smooth. Okay. Now I'm hitting 0 on my numeric keypad for the camera perspective view, and I'm right clicking the cylinder to select it. Let's try how the dynamic paint works and looks for the clip here, for the scene. And I have the cylinder selected. I'm at frame 1 and I'm hitting the I key to insert a location rotation keyframe. Perhaps let's move it up a bit, and now hit I and insert a location rotation keyframe, and I'll move up to say frame 45 and hit 1 on my numeric keypad, and I'll hit the Z key to grab my cylinder, move it at about here, and I want to rotate my cylinder as well. I'll hit R and Y. Let's rotate it on Y axis. Let's move over to the transform options. Y is set to 30, and let's set some rotation for the X axis. Let's set it to 40. And we're at frame 45. We have moved our cylinder, and I'll now hit the I key to insert the location rotation keyframe for frame 45. Now back to frame 1, and I'm hitting 0 for the camera perspective view, and I'll hit the play key. Let's see how it looks. And you can see that we have the cylinder here passing through the cube and affecting the cube's geometry. Okay. Now this looks pretty nice. What we can do is keep on working with the animation. Let's move to frame 60. Okay. And I'll hit 7 on my numeric keypad for the top ortho view. And I'll hit Z to grab my cylinder. Let's move it at about here, and I'll also change the rotation. Let's set the X to -10, let's set Y to -40, and let's set the Z to 10. And for frame 60 for our cylinder here, I'll hit the I key to insert a location rotation keyframe. Alright, now I'll move up 45 frames from 60 to 105, and I'll hit the Z key to grab my cylinder, move it at about here, and I'll also hit 1 on my numeric keypad and hit Z and Z. I'm at front ortho view, and I'll move my cylinder up, and we're at frame 105. Let's rotate our cylinder a bit. Let's set the X to 30, the Y to -10, and the Z to -80. And I'll hit the I key to insert a new location rotation keyframe for frame 105. Now I'm hitting 0 on my numeric keypad. Let's see again, and hitting play. And as you can see, we have the cylinder here hitting the cube and affecting the cube's geometry by using the dynamic paint. And I think we're good. Let's make our cylinder here move again. I'll hit 7 on my numeric keypad while I'm at frame 105, and let's move up to frame 120 actually, and I'll hit Z and X, or perhaps let's just grab it and move it over here. Okay, and I'm hitting 1 on my numeric keypad, hit Z and Z. Let's move it up a bit more. Alright, and we're at frame 120, so I'll hit the I key to insert a new location rotation keyframe for our cylinder. And now I'll move some frames up, actually 45 frames up. So we're moving up from 120 frame to frame 165. Okay, and now I'm hitting 7 on my keypad to switch the top ortho view and hit Z grab my cylinder, and I want my cylinder to pass through the cube once more, and hit 1 for the front of the view, and hit Z and Z. Let's move it down at about here, and now hit the I key to insert a new location rotation keyframe for my cylinder for frame 1065. Now I'll hit 0 on my memory keypad to move to camera perspective view. Let's move back to frame 1, let's see how it looks. And we have the cylinder here hitting the cube and affecting the cube's geometry. Alright. And while this one looks pretty nice, it's time to try building something nice along with the dynamic paint reaction here. And I'll hit Shift A and add mesh another cube. Now I'll hit 1 on my memory keypad for the front auto view. Hit the Tab key to switch from object edit mode, and hit S and Z to scale my cube up on the Z axis, and I'll scale this cube up 5 times like I did with the one that uses the dynamic paint. And now I'll hit the Tab key and hit G and Z to grab and move this cube on the Z axis and move this one up as well. Now I'll change the name of this cube. Let's call this one emitter. And what I'll do for my cube here is, let's hit 1 again for the front auto view, and I'll hit the Z key for the wireframe mode and hit the Tab to switch from object to edit mode, and I'll hit the S key to scale this cube down just by a bit, and then S and Z to scale it up on the Z axis. Alright. Now we have this cube that lives in the dynamic paint cube, and what I want for this one is to carry some particles. So time to create a particle. I'm moving on to the second layer, click this little icon to move to layer 2, and I'll hit Shift A and add mesh an ecosphere. This ecosphere will use the subdivisions level set to 2, and I'll just add the material to this object as well, and then move back to layer 1. Now time to select the emitter. Right mouse button click, let's find it, and this is emitter. And I'll move over to the particle options, click this little icon to move over to the particles panel, and I'll click plus to add a particle system to the cube object to the emitter. Now let's change the particle options. We want the start to be set to 1 and the end to be set to 1 as well, and that means that we'll be having all our particles appearing at the first frame. I'll increase the number, let's set it to 10,000 for now, and feel free to increase this one. And I'll also increase the lifetime, let's set it up from 100 and from 50, let's set it up to 180, or perhaps 240. Okay, and we want to emit our object to emit particles from the volume, and I'll also click random. And what we don't want here, I'll expand the cast and bring the cast steps to 1 from 10 to 1. And what I do not want here is to have the normal value here. We don't want our particles here to have a starting speed taken from the emitter. I'll set it to 0. And let's also change the render here. We want it to use and render an object. Click object, and I'll select the ecosphere. Okay, and I hope you can see our ecospheres here. And I'll change the size. Let's set it up from 0.05 to 0.08, and I'll add some variation for the size. Let's set it to 0.25. Okay, and I'll also expand the field weights, and what I want here is to have no gravity at all. I'll set it from 1 down to 0. Okay, now we're having some particles here that live inside the cube, and I think the options here are pretty nice. Let's add some force. I'll change the Brownian force here, let's set it to 0.2. The air drag, let's set it to 0.3, and the dampening, let's set it to 0.3 as well. And what I want is these particles here to react with my cylinder, pretty much the way the cube reacts to the cylinder using the dynamic paint. And in order to have the particles here reacting with the cylinder, I'm going to right click to select it, and I'll move over to the physics panel, click this little icon, and we're having the dynamic paint. This object is a brush and will also enable collision. And we'll modify the collision parameters here a bit. Let's set the dampening to be 0.3 and set the random value to 0.2. Let's add some friction. Let's set it to 0.2 and the random to be 0.2 as well. So I'm hitting 0 on my numeric keypad for the camera perspective view, and I'm hitting Z for the solid view, and let's hope that our cylinder here will react with both the cube and the particles, and I'm hitting the play. And as you can see here, we have the cylinder here that affects both the cube, and it also passes through the particle system and causes some particles here to fly away from the object. And let's see that again, as the cylinder here passes through our cube, it also carries away some particles with it. Let's move to the second layer for a while, select the ecosphere and click smooth for the shading. Okay, and I'm selecting the emitter. Let's find it. Okay, and what I want, move over to the particle options, and let's do something else. Let's move over to the render options and uncheck emitter, and I'll hit 0 on my numeric keypad to switch to camera perspective view. I'll select the lamp, I'll hit 1 for the front ortho, hit G, grab and move it up, hit 7 on my numeric keypad for the top ortho view, hit Z to grab the lamp and move it at about here, and I'll hit 0 on my numeric keypad, move over to the world options, and I want some environment lighting. I'll change the energy from 1, let's set it to 0.8. Let's keep it white, and I'll also increase the amount of samples from 5 to 6. Now let's render an image to take a look. Click render. And I think it looks pretty interesting. And this is basically what it's all about. I'm hitting the escape key, and what you can also do here is add some compositing. I'm selecting the camera, click the camera to select it, and move over to the camera object data, and let's display the limits, and let's change the distance of the focus point. Let's set it to 24. Okay, and about here. Alright, and now I'll hit 0 on my numeric keypad to switch to camera perspective view. Let's render another keyframe so that the blender will also calculate the depth values. Let's click render once more. Okay, now I'm hitting the escape key, and I'll split my 3D view and change the top part into a compositing node. Let's find it. Node editor, okay, and compositing, use nodes, and we're having a render layer and a composite node. And of course you can also use cycles. I'm pretty sure that it will look pretty awesome with cycles. Perhaps I'll render out some results for you to see using cycles, but let's use the blender render now and the composite node. I'll hit Shift A and let's add filter. Let's add a defocus node. Let's find it. Okay, connect it, and I'll also hit Shift A to add output viewer. Okay, we got a viewer here. Let's also connect the defocus node output to the input of the viewer. And I'll also click backdrop to take a look. And I'm also taking the Z value from the render layers and bringing it to the defocus node. And I'll check preview. And I'll use the Z buffer. And time to use the f-stop value here. I'll set it from 128. Let's set it down to 8. Or perhaps 4. Oh, let's set it to 2. Okay, and this is what we want. Now what I'll do is hit Shift A and let's add a filter. Let's add a glare node and let's connect this one as well. And we won't be using streaks, we'll be using fog glow. And let's bring the threshold down. And I'm bringing the threshold down, just trying to find a sweet spot. Okay, we're at about there. And what I'll also do is hit Shift A and add the distort, lens distortion. Okay, let's connect this one as well. And I'll bring the dispersion from 0 to 0.1. And let's also add, I'm hitting Shift A to add, let's see, a brightness contrast node. Alright, let's connect this one. And I'll bring the contrast up, let's set it up to 0.5, let's say. And of course for it all to work and appear on your renders, you should also take the output from the final node and make it an input of the composite node. And I think we're good. Let's play. Let's see our cylinder here passing through the cube and through the particle system once more. Okay, let's pause here and let's render a final image for you to see. Let's set it to full screen and let's set it to 70. Let's take a good look and click render. And what we're actually having here, and the good thing about this setup, is that we have the cylinder interacting with both the cube and the particle system, and the result is pretty nice, it's pretty interesting. You should and could also play along with the settings and stuff like that and create your own clips and animation. So this is it. I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial. This is Dimitris Christou and thanks for watching.